on the red side can be forced a little bit more into some standard bans.
Yeah, we've already seen them being quite comfortable to play a couple of different things. Well, the Kalista has been their first pick on, was the first pick on blue side in game number 2, and the thing they picked up in the first rotation on red side. So we'll see if that gets targeted down by eUnited. Of course, the Kalista Taric has kind of been the go-to so far for both games for Goldcoin United, whereas eUnited have been trying to really hamper down on that Cho'Gath priority, as they are going to wind up banning away the Thresh away from Mad like they have been, and the Cassiopeia gets banned away from Fly this time around.
So we'll have to see what United ends up first picking. Wouldn't it be bad to see the Kalista taken away, just because GCU has not shown an immense priority on Cho'Gath. The Maokai taken out this time by eUnited. Don't want to give that one over. Here's that final ban. Last time we saw them targeting more of the carries with the LeBlanc ban. This time they're going back to their game 1 bans completely. Don't want to give that Caitlyn over either. And eUnited does adapt and does take that Kalista away.
So they're going to deny that one from Rikara, so potentially getting themselves a better lane matchup on the bottom side of the map, and maybe playing through the fact that definitely Zazel now can be the one to pull the trigger and initiate some team fights. Gives a little bit of oomph to their melee support style that they wind up picking up. This time around, though, it's going to be Goldcoin United that finally gets their hands on Cho'Gath for the first time in this series.
We'll have to see if they're happy with that trade, considering for a while was eUnited taking the Cho'Gath side and GCU was getting the Kalista. Won those 2 games, so maybe this time eUnited will be able to swing it back. We'll have to see where they choose to play around with it, because even though Kalista has great gank support at 6, we had not seen much action down there at all in any game.
No, we saw on your screen, Soul didn't look a little happy locking in that Cho'Gath, but it could still potentially be a jungle Cho'Gath. I mean, we have kind of heard the back and forth about where it actually slots in a little bit better. eUnited's been a favor of it in the top side of the map, while the players in the ULCS have been saying it's a jungle pickup here, as well as some of the casters over here on the NALCS broadcast. But now that Trundle's going to be locked in yet again for the side of eUnited, so maybe a Trundle Kalista bot lane, maybe it's Trundle on the top side of the map. We'll have to wait and see through the rest of Champions Select where it winds up going. But Dandy may just be going back to yet another tank in the jungle. More importantly, a takeaway here as the Sejuani is taken away from GCU.
No Sejuani, something that Santorin has played in the past a little bit. Also played some of that Maokai, so Santorin's pool getting pinched a little bit, at least of what we've seen of him on 714, but I'm sure you can always fall back onto that Rek'Sai pick or something. We've seen that still be relatively popular in the LCS. Still a strong champion, but we are ending up with slightly mismatched lanes here. Both AD carries taken, likely both supports, but the difference is eUnited definitely have a jungler in the Sejuani, and GCU might be able to put that support, or that Cho'Gath into the jungle. We're not exactly sure. We'll have to see what they choose to ban out here. GCU gonna ban away that LeBlanc though.
Yep, they don't want GBN getting his hands on that again. Orianna gets banned away by eUnited. Now Fly did some pretty nasty things at the command Shockwave in the later stages of game 2. The later stages of game 2 were not very late game at all. But now we'll see if eUnited tries to target out something else. I mean, you mentioned the Rek'Sai still on the table. The Gragas was something that Santorin just wound up playing in the last game. So they pinch the pool on the jungle ever so slightly more. That could potentially lock him into a jungle Cho'Gath and left something open for the top side for solo. We'll have to wait and see here. It looks like with the ban time expiring, Alulu is going to be the final ban from Goldcoin United.
A little bit surprising to see the Lulu ban a couple times here. It is still decent in the sense that it has strong laning phase for the most part, and then can become pretty useful at shutting down someone who's going to go in. GC doesn't really have that right now. A polymorph onto a Cho'Gath is not the end of the world, so to speak. So it's more of a lane focus thing where they think that's a bad matchup for the Taric, supposedly. And here we actually see the Jarvan taking. And this can still go jungle.
Yeah,
once again,
got a lot of flex.
Feels like at this point, jungle and top lane are pretty much interchangeable. I would expect that to be a top lane Jarvan, though, just because we've seen Solo bust that one out a couple times. eUnited look like they might answer with their Renekton, though.
Yeah, and that's something that Licorice has used to great effect himself. With the Gnar banned away, that means that Solo's not going to be able to take his range into melee champion in that matchup here. We'll see what eUnited are going to be picking up for their last pick overall. It does cement the fact that it's Jungle Sejuani and Trundle as the support role once again. And it looks like with the Galio has gone through both games. Not picked, not banned. Makes his appearance here and potentially match deciding game number 3.
eUnited, problem was they only had 3 tanks last game. Gotta up it to 4. Get that mid laner on a tank.
There's not a lot of damage, you're right, coming out from eUnited.
No, this is one of those comps that if it falls behind, ends up completely unable to really kill the enemy's backline. GCU gonna end up taking some hyper carry.
The Victor gets locked in here. We saw them hovering kind of between the Corki, the Victor. They decided to go with the more AP-centric threat load. Corki himself at more 80-20 as far as magic damage is concerned. They're going to supplement the fact that they now have the Jarvan on the top side of the map, which could potentially still want to go into the jungle, but they have a Jarvan and a Cho'Gath, so either mix of those, they're balancing out the overall damage threats on the side of GCU, as it looks like that now the fact that they have a lot more damage than eUnited, they have a somewhat beefy front line no matter what orientation their champions wind up going into. They have wave clear coming out from Victor, they have late game security in the Tristana, whereas on the side of eUnited, it kind of seems like once again with all these tanks on their side and specifically Renekton on the top side of the map, they got to get those early game advantages, otherwise it's not going to work out for them.
Once again, they also have the global advantage coming out of the mid lane 3 games in a row, but in the first 2, they had not really been able to use that to snowball any of the side lanes. Ganks really only were focused on top side. Bot lane was completely ignored for the large majority of the series, in the laning phase at least. And here in game 3, with the Kalista pick finally on eUnited's side, maybe they'll be able to start forcing down around there, but Trundle is not known for the best gank setup. Could be a little bit of a struggle. And they can always go topside, try and snowball that Renekton.
Yeah, that's very true. The Renekton pickup for Licorice on the top side of the map puts a little bit more threat into that lane matchup, a little bit more of a snowball potential too, as whichever one of these kind of hybrid carry tanks on the top side gets early game advantages could influence the rest of the map if they utilize the teleport usage quite effectively. In the mid lane matchup now for GBM, something he just kind of has to survive as opposed to get advantages in and try to, you know, snowball his own advantages. So game number 3 here for eUnited, a little bit of a, even more of a tanky approach, a little more of a safer bet here, whereas Goldcoin United, they've had to change things up a little bit, but they're definitely more high damage, high octane on their side.
Fly will be the guy to see if he can keep up his good performance so far. He's been doing a good job controlling GBM, getting the better of him. This time around, Victor does have a hard time really controlling the laning phase versus the Galio. GBM will have a pretty easy time trading onto him, potential gank setup, as well as at 6 with that ultimate unlock, can roam much easier. And we really need to see that out of GBM, because if there's one person who has really been underperforming thus far, you would kind of have to point to GBM. He's been dying a lot in some situations where maybe he shouldn't be dying, falling behind. Whereas in the top side, very jungler influence heavy. Both junglers have been finding ganks in the games. Both bot lanes have been farming even for the most part. And it really does feel like that mid lane has been what has been breaking the game open for GCU.
Well, we said that GBM, we want to see some side lane influence out of him. So he picked up the Galio in the mid lane. He could hero his entrance at a moment's notice to either side of Summoner's Rift. We'll see if Fly's able to keep him in check this game on the Victor.
The thing is, a lot of the side lane stuff does come down to, you know, your jungler and one of those side laners actually making the play and you follow up. If you're Karthus, you can't just ult randomly in a fight. You need to force around that bot lane or force around that top side. And it feels like they haven't done a good job doing that. And that's what we're saying. Hopefully we see it more this time with the Kalista. And GBM can start following up on some of these engages. But he also needs to make sure he's not falling apart to ganks or the 1v1s.
You see that Licorice on the Renekton poked his head into the enemy jungle and saw that Santorum was starting on his Raptors. Danny, in the meantime, started on the opposite side of the map at his own Raptors and is going to be going for a red buff afterwards. Both of these games, Danny has had a slightly faster jungle clear than Santorin has, although that may be extremely pick-dependent in the jungle, but game number 1, it was Santorin getting the first jungle action on the map that was an advantage. Game number 2 went into Dandy's favor, and they got turned around by Santorin right after that one. But as you mentioned, both of them have been focusing down on the top side of the map. This time around, because they're starting at, you know, mirroring their sides, both starting on the red buff side. It could be Santorin going down to the bottom side first, where it will be Dandy making his appearance first on the top side, where Licorice is already getting an early level 2 and advantages on solo.
Licorice has been pretty good so far in this series. Game 1, received a little bit of help, even though we got ganked early on. They eventually got a dive off on the top side, found some solo kills onto solo. And in game 2, for the most part, it was the solo show. Once again, early kill onto solo, got answered back with the help of Santorin, and then he was off to the races on that Gnar pick. Once again, we see a potential level 3 dive coming in. Did just use that call to meet. Cooldown will be up. Does have Fury for an empowered stun here.
We'll see who winds up taking tower aggro first. Looks like it will wind up being Licorice, who gets to slice the dice out of tower range. Is not going to wind up going down, but neither will Solo, as now Danny takes an extra tower shot as well. Both of these eUnited members on the top side extremely low.
Very, very low, and Solo not only survives, but with how low they got, is safe to continue farming this wave underneath the turret. Very well played by him. Didn't even lose his flash. eUnited did not commit any flashes. Bit of posturing set up with that dive there, but they're able to survive it. And Licorice already teleports back in. Solo's going to get his recall off and do the same, but Solo, once again, trying to get exploited on the top side. eUnited focusing there.
And so eUnited unable to get advantages from Dandy's slightly faster jungle pathing, or Santorin ended on the bottom side, and it's going to be another Infernal Drake spawning first. I think it's Infernal Drake spawned first every single game so far in this best of 3. Is the trades on the bottom side of the map getting a little bit more aggressive this time around. Zazel taking a lot of damage from Madlife following up as well. The explosive charge, the heal comes through. Dandy's on the bottom side. Arctic is sold forward. There's actually a teleport being channeled by GBM that gets canceled because Dandy's already got first blood.
And there we see GCU getting aggressive down the bot side, something we have not seen that much of as small gank in the mid lane.
Well, GBM going to get silenced after being ruptured up, but he's A-okay just to walk away.
Very hard to kill a Galio, generally speaking, but that's what we were saying is the aggression down the bot lane had not been too prevalent, and this is one of the few times we saw an all-in really come in. Dandy was able to get down there and influence it. They also had the teleport coming in as well. There was basically no chance for GCU to really win that all-in, not respecting the extra teleport advantage. It did look good at the start. They had level 3, whereas Zazel was still level 2 from his early roam. Starts getting dropped down low, but Sejuani's able to come in to get the flash follow-ups. Just a little too aggressive down that bot side.
Yeah, and it looked like they didn't exactly know where Dandy was going to be because there was the Scuttle Crab taken in the river, and Santorin had passed down there and gotten some early vision on the bottom side of the map. Dandy finding a pocket basically in his own jungle because Santorin couldn't cross across the river there.
Was a little surprising still, just given the fact that there was aggression on the top side not too long ago. He's going to reset, probably going to end up in the bot side. Maybe a small oversight on GCU's bot lane, just not really calculating where they think the jungler will be.
eUnited make the first moves on the bottom side of the map, and this is opening up an area of the map that we haven't necessarily seen a lot of early game aggression around, which is the bottom side. We mentioned coming into this best of 5 series that both of these marksmen, both of these bot laners here, Deathly and Rakara, had some of the highest KDAs in the entire NA Challenger series, and a lot of them were dealing large majority amounts of the damage and the kills for both of their teams. It looks like, ooh, good double dazzle stun coming out from Madlife, but it's a lot of spears in him, and the Rend is going to hold true. Definitely finds another kill as Madlife gets a little bit too aggressive for some ward control.
We're saying it's sometimes difficult for Tarek to set up some ganks. Hold on. Skirmish on the top side.
Yeah, looks like this time around it's GCU focusing the top side a little bit more now. Licorice is going to pop his own dominance here, turns back around. There's a little bit of the AoE damage, but Solo and Santorin should shut him down, and the goal goes to Solo.
Good answer by Santorin. Bot side was starting to get a little out of control. You need to find something somewhere. Does get Jarvan a kill, but eUnited looks like they want to punish the jungler showing up on the top side. Dandy makes his way down bottom.
Yep, they're not even going to be able to get a dive onto Rakara, but just zoning him away maybe enough as Dandy starts up on the Gromp on the bottom side. It's getting as much tower damage as possible down. This one already down to about a quarter of its own HP. Golden United support shows back up, and they're able to start wave clearing away, but that's already huge advantage on the bottom side for Deathly and Zazel.
Tons of damage done to that turret. Might be able to push in and force a play later with GBM. Slightly behind in CS with that early gank that kind of came in, forced him out of there.
Oh,
but now, Fly potentially caught a little out of position, does sidestep the W, takes the blast cone out, keeping it cool.
Fly just poking his head down into the bottom side, but Dandy was there to try to turn around and capitalize. This is Madlife. Wasn't even really going for vision control, just wants to clear out a Callista Ghost, walks into a brush and finds it Deathly.
Just not great pathing on the side of Madlife, has no summoners available, still in range of that pillar, so still getting slowed. The Ren stacks continue to stack up and gets taken down really in a situation where he probably shouldn't have been in river. The bot wave was just pushed in by the side of eUnited. And here on the same side, Licorice just trying to get a little bit aggressive, push the wave in, but GCU get a nice wraparound gank. Get a kill off onto him.
GCU may have lost that on the bottom side, but get a good response on the top side. Get the snowball going for Solo, who had a heck of a performance on the Gnar last game. Not necessarily known as a Jarvan player like he was for his Gnar play, but we'll see if he's actually able to transition those advantages over Licorice, who was one of the standout players on eUnited for the majority of this split, was kind of like the standout rookie of the spring split in general. So now Solo's able to contain that side and Fly's able to contain GBM. It's really going to be about, can eUnited put all of their advantages they're getting on the early game into Deathly, and is he going to be able to carry?
That's the big question mark, just because he has such a good position here to kind of take this game over. They have all the tools to dive around the bot side. He is ahead already on that recurve bow. And this is the part of the map that if you can shut down Rakara, this kind of hyper-scaling Tristana, as well as snowball yourself on the Callista pick, you start getting a dominating position in this game. And this is something that we haven't seen that much out of eUnited generally in terms of snowballing around bot side, not necessarily the play style that they're accustomed to playing the most. We saw Dandy did have a good job countering that gank, but it wasn't like they were forcing and playing around definitely necessarily to get that kill.
We see Fly trying to inch towards the top side of the map. There's a Scuttle Crab that will spot him out, but Santorin's already making his way over here. The Flag and Drag combo comes out, a flash away from Licorice, and the Dominus being popped already, trying to keep himself as safe as can be. We do see the Dandy's wrapped around on Sejuani to try to thwart any sort of dive, but Santorin is stepping forward. They want to go for this, and he gets locked up, and he's going to get taken down. Licorice finds himself a kill.
Big mistake out of Santorin there. Just kind of walked through on his own to get a ward down to spot a potential dive opportunity. Solo was not necessarily on the same page, as well as the fact that he managed to take turret aggro during all of that. So he had the turret beating down on him as well. Now with Santorin dead, once again that telegraphs the bot lane is open for a potential dive. GBM has roamed down here, and the wave's coming in. Gonna back off.
Yeah, not gonna quite go for it. Looks like they may have spotted Zeyzal coming around the backside from that ward they have in their own brush. Bottom lane tower is already extremely low, and the Infernal Drake is available, so it looks like the eUnited, they're not gonna wind up going for that one, but they will continue to keep ever vigilant watch over that one as the Callista Ghost is there, in addition to a couple of control wards on the bottom side of the map.
Kind of what we were saying about not being super aggressive around the bot side. There's not really a good reason not to force down there. I mean, you have the man advantage. The jungler was just killed on the top side. Even if the guy TP's in, you can still force that out of him and then back off. They don't go for the Infernal Dragon. They don't go for the dive. They're happy to get that kill up on the top side, but maybe a little bit too reserved here out of eUnited when they could be blowing this game wide open.
And this game number 3, and they are pretty much on match point for Goldcoin United. So eUnited might be taking, a little bit of the nerves into account for that one. And as we did mention before, they don't necessarily have to go for the dive, but it was, something they could execute very easily here. It looks like now they're going to be content to put the pressure on the bottom side of the map instead of going for a dive. They go for the first tower of the game. That one's going to go over too deftly. Dandy's kind of waiting in the wings, though, as Santorin and Fly were waiting around for this one. Solo's teleport coming in. He will wind up completing that one. There was already a flash away from, looked like Licorice coming in there. Now, teleport winds up being channeled in. The Hero's entrance is landing as well. It winds up locking down on Santorin. The fight is kind of split up on all sides. Licorice is taking a lot of damage from the Chaos Storm on the top. The rest of the map being zoned away on the bottom side by Deftly. A Rupture lands on the tanky front line for eUnited, and although a lot of summoner spells were burned, nobody goes down.
Like you said, very chaotic fight. Not great target selection really out of either team there. It was tough for eUnited, to be fair, because you want to turn back onto the teleporting Solos coming into the middle of your team, but they have a Taric, and he, as you saw, used the Cosmic Radiance right away. GCU, after winning that, will get the Infernal Dragon, so a nice victory, but eUnited doesn't want to let that go unpunished.
Well, they don't have Solo available, and there's no teleport here, but GBM going to flash taunt, locks down on the 2 members. Solo's going to have to flag and drag himself out of this one. Mad Life, though, on the opposite side from the rest of his team. Is he going to get locked up? No, has the flash available, so GCU will be able to steal themselves an Infernal Drake.
Very nice out of GCU. They do lose a ton of summoners to make that one work for them, but if this game stalls out, if they can hold on, stop the snowball of this very tanky team comp from eUnited, this will benefit them in the long run pretty heavily. eUnited don't want to let that go unpunished, though. With the low health bars, they're going to be looking at this Rift Herald.
United be trading objectives on the map. Rift Herald will go into their favor as everyone from GCU is backing off. It was still a good call from Goldcoin United. He mentioned that they committed a ton of summoner spells to wind up going for that fight on the bottom side of the map. And they had the man advantage because they saw Licorice go back, so they are able to get out with their lives. They get themselves a later game scaling Drake and the Infernal Drake, and it plays into the, basically what they want to do. They still have a Victor who's going to deal a lot of damage late game. They have the Tristana that can wind up ripping through multiple members from United if they wind up getting that far, and they will outpace Licorice's Renekton on the top side of the map, so a little bit more investment planning from GCU.
The thing they have to be careful about is where this Rift Herald goes. Breaking the mid lane is so huge for eUnited this game in terms of freeing up their roams to side lanes. The Callista, the Renekton can both be used to set up big plays, and if GBM can push in mid lane even further before roaming to join in on those, that'll be a huge advantage for them. That said, they spent so long getting that Rift Herald, it's bought GCU time to get this. They instead sack and go up to the top side, going for the turret trade. We're talking about the map opening up being good for eUnited potentially. With no objectives down the bot side, they already lost the Infernal. They got the Rift Herald. They just swapped the lanes instead.
Yeah, so Kalista going to the top side opens up a tower on the bottom side for GCU, but the response potentially going to be here for eUnited. We saw Solo making his way top side, stealing the Raptors away from Dandy, who was trying to steal them away from Santorin. But eUnited are going to be the ones now. It looked like they lost the tower and were a little bit behind on the bottom side of the map, but they're going to wind up coming out ahead as they trade for the top tier 1 tower. They get themselves back into a 2,000 gold advantage.
Can they continue to snowball, though? 2,000 at 13.5 minutes is pretty big. And with that Rift Herald sitting in their pocket, they may be able to grab the last outer turret in the mid lane.
Seems to be where the most telegraphed or easiest to execute play may be from the side of eUnited. And with the, their finals lives on the line, we could potentially see them playing around that one as Dandy, like you mentioned, if he can utilize that Rift Herald to open up the map for GBM, that'll execute the game plan that eUnited has failed to do so far for 2 out of these 3 games.
Shut Down Fly is the name of the game that we heard out of eUnited before the series. Not been able to do that quite yet. This is their best early game to date so far, though. Won the bot lane. Top side worked out all right with some miscues in both of those, really punishing GCU's small mistakes. And GBM hanging on the mid lane this time. Before, he was actually losing these matchups relatively hard. This time still down CS, but has not died to a gank, has not died to a 1v1 kill. So obviously a much better game out of GBM.
Yeah, and Fly, though he may not have shut down GBM, has still kind of been able to contain him. We saw one GBM ultimate, the Hero's Entrance, being used on the bottom side of the map where there's basically a fight already erupting and Fly was involved in it. So he has kept the roams from GBM down to a minimum so far, but GBM is just waiting for the rest of his team to show up with the key and unlock the door to the rest of Summoner's Rift for this Galio pickup. We'll see if they wind up utilizing the Rift Herald to do so. But that one's still in the pocket for Dandy. It has been there for a couple of minutes already, so it might be expiring soon, but they are making their way towards mid lane.
Yeah, so it looks like this is going to be the push that they go for with it. Dandy is in the area. We'll drop that in a second. GCU not quite in a position to defend this one that easily. Tristana is not there, and there's 4 men grouped up around this mid lane turret. TPs are just starting to come up. We'll see if they can hold on.
Well, they still have Santorin, and they do have Fly with a lot of wave clear potential. Rift Herald actually be focused down here, but GBM draws dagger from the tower. The Cosmic Radiance get used as well. Licorice is fighting solo on the other side of this as well. The Fate's Call throws Zazel into this one, but they've been able to take down the Rift Herald with the tower barely standing with a little bit of HP left. Oh, actually, more HP. Never mind, that was the Rift Herald that had a little bit of HP.
Yeah, Rift Herald got a lot of stuff dropped on him. You saw the smite come in from Santorin, I believe. And eUnited were not able to coordinate that push with a minion wave. So they did not really follow up on the Rift Herald that well. And, GCU did a good job of understanding the importance of that mid lane turret and do not hold resources being greedy. They basically all in that Rift Herald saying, no, we're going to kill this thing as soon as we can, and we're also going to drop our ultimates on everybody. And Fly did a really good job chunking out, definitely making them have to be scared. Zazel went flying in. It was not a very well-coordinated push on the side of eUnited. And GCU hold on to that turret, very important.
So we saw Solo kind of matching where Licorice was going on the map, making sure that Renekton had no threat of a flank opportunity. We see Licorice's Renekton is slightly ahead of Solo on the Jarvan pickup, 5.5 to 4.8k gold in his pocket. The jungle matchup also going slightly in favor of Dandy, but actually the mid lane matchup slightly in favor of Fly. The biggest difference right now is the fact that Definitely now has about a 900 to 1,000 gold advantage over Rakara, and he'll be the main person to make things happen for eUnited as this game scales later and later.
One thing that I'm pretty happy about is another Infernal Dragon. Going to be spawning in the next 20 seconds. Good thing Freak isn't casting this, so I'm sure we'll just be getting Cloud Dragons. But
yeah, that's exactly how the RNG works, depending on the caster.
Let's see who joins the lobby.
Since you're more of a spicy kind of analyst, they put the Infernal Drake in there to, fire things up for you.
Or I love Infernal Dragons. Just make everyone fight. You get those kind of crazy dragon fights that we saw just 7 minutes ago where they were forcing down around. They were going to get another one most likely as eUnited starts it off, but GCU is in the area to contest. Solo backing off, looking for a potential place to teleport. Both top laners focus more on that, but the objective is getting low with a lot of Ren stacks in there.
Yep, we're going to see the face calls. They decide to go for the turn. They don't actually land that onto Rakar, and Zazel already about half HP from taking up that tower. Solo teleports in on one side, Licorice teleports in on the other, and GBM's going to get Buster shot backwards. But Dandy's in the back line here. He's going to wind up going down early, but the Hero's Entrance when GBM was there, but he has to just try to run away from this one. Now they're kiting back towards Definitely. GBM picks up a kill on Rakara, so Tristana's already down. Definitely still pretty healthy. Flash forward from GBM, locks down on the 3 members, and Definitely's able to execute Fly. Now GCU's in full retreat mode as eUnited are the ones that come out ahead.
They win that fight 2-for-1 and force GCU away from the objective. They're going to turn back onto it. A nice team fight victory out of eUnited for what started out very well for GCU. Riccara just went way too aggressive, jumped forward, trying to continue on to Deathly after getting the initial kill. Huge mistake there and kind of cost his team that team fight.
So GCU, a little bit of missteps in that fight will result in them not only losing the second Infernal Dragon, but then the last outer tower on the map, as well as the tier 1 mid lane tower that Rift Herald failed to take a little bit earlier will go down in favor of eUnited. And just to add a little sting, they steal the blue buff.
So good job just matching the teleports, trying to get in and provide that front line. A lot of that is going on to Santorin early on. Then when they see the GBM flank, it's a nice buster shot and ultimate to make sure that this engage does not work out well. So they take most of this damage. They finish out very early on onto Santorin, but then Riccara jumps forward, exposing himself completely to the enemy team. They're able to get those kills, and then once that's down, even though it's a 4v4, they are not in a great position. Excellent flash taunt there by GBM, who was sitting in the brush channeling it where there was no vision. Gets it onto Fly, and they finish him off. That's both backline carries down on the side of GCU. But you see how touch and go these fights can get. A great Cosmic Radiance out of Mad Life shut down that initial engage attempt by eUnited. The front line drops to that huge damage that can come in from a Victor and a Tristana. But Tristana needs to play these fights slow. Can't just jump instantly onto the back line. They have so many other big, beefy frontline tanks that just because you chewed through one does not mean you're free to go forward.
We've seen the team fighting prowess of both of these Challenger Series teams on full display here, as they've been able to both cases was with Tristana. In game number 1, it was definitely hitting the tower and stepping out a little too far, and we saw the CC chain from Gold Coin United locking him down. This time around, it's eUnited. As soon as Tristana jumps a little bit too far forward, they immediately turn and burn her down, and then the follow-up flash taunt that was being set up by GBM immediately locks down the Fly, and they take out the other high damage threat. So very good team fighting skill overall from both of these teams on Showcase.
It's also worth knowing that GBM is going for a little bit of that higher Galio damage build, working in that Proto Belt, understands that they are very beefy, wants extra mobility for these team fightings, trying to snowball as effectively as he can, and bringing in a little bit more damage to boot. So he understands this game, that if it goes super late, the enemy team does have better champions for melting frontline, and eUnited is basically one giant frontline with a Kalista to throw extra people in.
Yeah, we did see GBM utilizing that Protobot build effectively in their series. I believe it was against Big God Shackles. He was able to utilize the Protobot and the Justice Punch to close a lot of distance and pretty much almost assassinate targets at some point in time, as well as Licorice. Getting a little bit of the worst of the trade here from Soul as the Flag and Drag and the Slice and Dice go opposite directions. So when two top laners meet, they just kind of bounce off of each other for now.
We are approaching the kind of wet noodle status that comes in the top lane. Both have their Black Cleavers, and Tiamat's done. They'll probably round those out with Titanic Hydras and then into Resist. Pretty much completely matching the build, but Licorice does kind of have that insurmountable advantage of the extra Doran's Blade.
Oh, the insurmountable Doran's advantage. I thought you were going to mention the Dominus ultimate, which is a bonus amount of health and, you know, a decent amount of drain coming out from the AoE as well, but I'll go with the Doran's advantage.
Yeah, that's the much bigger thing here.
I mean,
there's a lot of small things. If you pointed out, he has the sustain advantage with the Q.
Is this your Infernal Drake level analysis coming through?
What is Matt referencing?
No, because you just mentioned that you bring the spiciness to the cast. That's why they
You
bring the
mentioned
Infernal
that.
Drakes in.
You mentioned that.
All right, well, I'm just going to keep doing the play-by-play then and leave the analysis to you, as now it looks like eUnited are trying to rotate up to the top side of the map, put some pressure down on that tier 2 outer tower, or inner tower, but also at the same time, going for a bit of Baron pressure. There's a lot of wards from GC around the area, though. Danny and Zazul getting a little bit too far forward here as GC is going to lock down on them. Solo wrapping around for a flank. Looks like they're just going to dissuade eUnited from that interesting Baron call.
It's one of those relatively low-risk Baron calls. You're not completely tunnel on it. You're getting it low, and with Kalista, if they do end up getting vision on it and you already have it low enough, there's no real chance of a Smite Seal. They do have the true damage that comes in from Santorin, but Kalista will out-damage that if you have enough Ren stacks set up. So it's relatively low commitment. They turned off, potentially looking for a pick if they could find one. Good control out of GCU to not panic when they turned off and just kite that one out. Mad Life held on to his ultimate, and eUnited realized this from there that they can't continue to force. They back off.
eUnited continuing to put pressure on multiple sides of the map. We see pings once again going down around the Baron Pit area. There are still some control wards from GCU over there. So they are going to wind up putting a little bit of darkness on the map on the top side there as Licorice continues to split push away on this bottom side. Infernal Drake will be coming out in about a minute and a half, so still a little bit of time to buy over there. Actually trying to catch down to Riccara, but he winds up utilizing that Buster Shot just to knock Kalista backwards. Is now definitely utilizing the advantage kind of in the interesting 1v1 wave clear situations that we'll see Tristana and Kalista getting into on the top side.
I like Dandy's purchase of the Warmogs here, kind of playing into that repeated baits around Baron idea. The Kalista starts building up Ren stacks. You might start getting low from the Baron damage, but if they spot you out and you need to back off, you just take a couple moments out of combat, you will get that regen to kick in, get back up to full, and then you can kind of go into that pattern over and over, and hopefully eventually you find an opening with an engage or a lapse in vision control out of GCU where you can actually finish off that Baron.
As you mentioned, eUnited starting up the Baron again. Dandy on zoning duties. There's a scrying trinket in the pit, but is being disabled by a control ward, so they can't really see anything, but another one will be thrown down, so that little vision reveal will reveal that eUnited is on it. GVM, though, does not have a Warmog's armor, so he will not be able to sustain himself up equally as fast as Dandy will be able to, so they decide to back away as Goldcoin Nanda continues a bit of a dance back and forth between the top, mid, and Baron areas of the map.
Dance will continue, but probably more down on that bot side with the Dragon spawning in 20 seconds. GCU starting to work their way down there. Both front lines bumping into each other, but Zeyzal takes a big chunk of damage.
Takes a large amount of his HP and damage. The Victor lasers now has a fully upgraded Hex Core. Does have the Lich Bane in addition to that, so he's going to start hitting with like a truck on some of those auto attacks after just landing a Q. It's going to be massive amounts of damage coming through from the single target here. And as our third Infernal Drake is spawned on the map, it's Goldcoin United that take pole position of this one. We'll see if there's a fight that breaks out.
Teleport coming in the mid lane for Fly. The Santor, or the Dandy ultimate misses wide.
Yeah, the Glacial Prison doesn't lock down on anybody. It's more of a Glacial Zone as now the Cosmic Radiance lands from Tarek. A good Cataclysm locks people up in the front line, but eUnited get the first kills of this one. Licorice is the one to get that. Kalista executes on the Jarvan, and actually the Dragon goes down in the middle of all that as well. eUnited don't lose anybody, and they're cleaning up kills in the fight.
eUnited's able to hop onto Rikara and somewhat confuse GCU's front line on exactly what their plan was there. They weren't sure if they wanted to peel, they wanted to go for the Dragon, or they just wanted to bump front lines into each other and try and focus them down one at a time. Rikara ends up getting away off the back of Fly getting CC'd. He was up on the top side on the ramp, relatively untouched for a large portion of that fight, but eventually gets focused down. And with that victory, eUnited's going to be able to grab their Baron 25.5 minutes into the game.
Yeah, it took a minute and a half of dancing around it and then a fight around the opposite side of the map, but eUnited secure themselves their first Baron of this best of 5 series off the back of a fight that looked like it started well for GCU, to be honest.
All right, I really like the way this fight starts. They get the Cosmic Radiance of basically everyone. Rikara's hitting away, but GBM starts focusing him down. It's going to be able to solo him out if he does not receive extra help. And you see they're not exactly sure who to focus down. And eventually Fly ends up in the middle of the team as multiple people started getting low. He drops as the front line is just a little bit too far ahead, or behind, excuse me, on the side of GCU.
And so a 4-0 result into eUnited getting a huge advantage in this game. 26.5 minutes in. Not nearly as far into as far ahead as GCU were in game number 2. They still find themselves at about a 7,000 gold lead. There's still multiple towers stick on the map as well. There's only 3 that have fallen in their favor. These double Infernal Drakes, in addition to that, they have a very beefy Renekton now on the top side of the map. Titanic Hydra and Black Cleaver finished for Licorice. Their Kalista Gambit as the first pick overall for Deathly, and the first focus of these ganks on the bottom side of the map has paid off in dividends right now as he is 3-0-5.
Definitely having a huge game this time around. Has a lot of people to fight in front of him. He's able to build up Ren stacks over the course of these fights and then start ripping them out, picking up kills. Overall, GCU's comp does stack up decently well. You see how effective that Tarek ultimate can be, but they've just fallen a little bit too far behind. eUnited now with a big gold lead and the extra Infernal Dragon. And the Baron buff.
So many things in their favor as they're just going into a 1-3-1 split push set up. As the 3 core in the mid lane takes down that inner tower. GVM on the bottom side is going toe-to-toe with Jarvan, whereas Licorice is no answer, no equal on the top side of the map as Renekton's going to be pushing that one down. And GCU hard pressed back into their own base, down 9 kills to 2. Now the 3 will rotate up and become a 4-1 split push. Or unless Deathly doesn't want to join. Licorice is like, nah guys, I got this one. 2 towers have fallen so far with this Baron buff and still 2 minutes left on it.
So Fly getting caught out in the mid lane, he gets blown up.
Definitely found himself a nice target. He just ran to bits right there. As now with that wave clear potential from the Victor, this mid lane inhibitor tower is going to be threatened. They've grouped up as 4 on the mid side of the map. GBM is still split pushing on the bottom side, and the inhibitor tower is going to be taken. eUnited might be trying to match the pace of Goldcoin United from game number 2.
Looks like they want to answer back with force, not just to win a game, but to stomp They already have ballooned all the way up to a 10K gold lead now, working on their second inhibitor turret. Not much GCU can do with their comp. It just wants to scale its late game, but it's not going to reach it.
Yeah, this late game might be right now as the Baron buff still has 1 minute and 20 seconds on it, but United are going to be content to just sit back and recall. They got a huge influx of gold off of not only the kills in the mid lane, the fact that they've taken down 5 towers off of that push.
I just want to say too, with the tank meta, we said how good it is at snowballing. I always find it a little curious when I hear that, oh, you know, this team's win conditions X, or it's a really stable meta, because you end up in situations where there's just so many engage options, and it's so hard to melt through this from behind. You just see definitely runs wild, blows up fly. That's not really tank meta related. That's just a good pick-off attempt of Victor, who was a little bit too far forward. But like what I was saying, you end up in these fights where the team that gets ahead early on, it's just such an advantage to have members who get very beefy, can tank neutral objectives, can force fights. When you have multiple people, multiple engaged tools, you can kind of miss one and it not be the end of the world. You're not, you know, squishy, so the enemy team can't pick you off easily if they catch you caught out of position. It actually leads to a situation where a team that gets ahead is usually able to close games out very, very effectively, and it often makes the other team look like they never had a chance. You wonder, what could this team comp have ever done? Well, it's usually the case where if it was on the other, she was on the other foot, they would be the one stomping.
It's not quite like a fail-safe as much as a symptom of the fact that multiple tanks are just extremely difficult to take down when, you know, the one thing you could do to them is build damage, but they're building resistances, your damage is cut because you're falling behind, your carries the ones that are dying at this point. You have a 0-1 Tristana and a 1-3 Victor, so Goldcoin United are kind of just falling prey to the same thing that happened to eUnited kind of in game number 1. They had to wait till the late game for Tristana to scale up. Their GBM LeBlanc in the mid lane wasn't a huge damage threat. They kind of became a one-dimensional composition, as now Fate's Call is going to run it missing, but Zazel's going to keep himself alive for the time being. Cataclysm locks down to the front line here, but the Hero's Engine from GBM will lock down to the back line coming out from GCU. First kill is there on to for Deathly as Tristana's able to answer one. They're still fighting underneath this tower, but a double kill winds up running through for Kalista. Deathly's running wild. Actually, Dandy picks up the kill there on the Sejuani, as that's a 3rd kill. Rikara barely staying alive, gets one more pot shot on GBM, but he will not fall to focus from the tower. But eUnited have gotten the kills they need to break through the base. Nexus towers are fallen, Mark, and eUnited may strike with their first win, but Santorin staying alive in the front line, still pretty healthy, takes a chunk of damage. Rikara's healed himself up at this point in time, but definitely is untouched. He's hopping around the base, he's hopping around in their face. Santorin dropping low, lots of spears, and he rips through for a kill. Rikara will fall after, and eUnited 15 kills to 3, 1 minute slower than GCU, bounce back in game 3.
They take away the Kalista pick early on, it wins them the bot lane, and it wins them the late game, 7-0-7 out of Deathly. Huge performance for him, and a huge performance out of all of eUnited, honestly. Great team focus in those mid-game team fights to balloon that lead very quickly.
Man, this has been, you know, a very interesting game. We see eUnited, the big pivotal thing is going to be, can GBM be unlocked on the map? Will they be able to play around the split push from Licorice? Will definitely be able to go even in his lane matchup. This time, they gank heavily on the bottom side of the map. They focus down for Deathly, and he's the one that's able to transition advantages around the map. This may be because of the Kalista pick first a while, because now he's been able to throw Zazel into the engages. They're the ones that have the momentum to start these team fights up, and they're the ones that have the pacing around these objective fights.
Absolutely, and then from there, they snowball through the game. That last team fight did a great job illustrating my point about the tank meta, because that was not a super clean engage. Kalista ult miss, Zazel's too far forward. Doesn't matter, you're so far ahead. You live under that turret for about 10, 15 seconds. They crushed that game, and a lot of that was off the back of some of GCU's mistakes. That bot lane fight early on, where they did not respect the fact that Dandy could potentially join in on that fight, as well as not even having a teleport to match the one that GBM was going to bring down there early on as well. Santorin on the top side tried to walk into the turret to ward behind the brush. He gets blown up, and with those advantages, eUnited never really relented. They might have been a little slow around forcing some dives that they could have done earlier, but they still took the turret and then grabbed all the dragons.
Right, so Goldcoin United had a couple of missteps. They're a little uncharacteristic to the way that they've been playing, you know, previously in this matchup, but eUnited had some things go very, very well for them. First, I mean, we mentioned already on the bottom side of the map, but GBM in this matchup went toe-to-toe with Fly and CS in a melee versus range matchup too, of all things.
He was falling behind pretty early on. He was down about 20 CS because he did receive a gank and was forced out of lane.
That, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, for the most part, though, the big thing is that the Galio was able to get around and had a lot of dives in team fights. He also played them very well, had some great flash taunts.
You know, United come out ahead in that one. Now for an in-depth look at that game, let's send it on over to the analysts.
Thank you very much, Tom. And how about that? GBM getting on a champion that he's comfortable with, and eUnited find themselves a win.
He's got himself the Galio. He's playing a good team fighter.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, they're doing great.
I was so surprised he didn't play the first 2 games.
Yeah.
Because we were like a scrim partners versus them before the first match, and he played Gallia a lot, like a ton, and he had the best success on it. That's the champion where it's just so dumb that you can push without getting punished and go bot lane, TP on bot lane, get the turret. That's just the GBM classic, you know, and Talia. So I was very surprised they didn't pick it in the first 2 games, and then finally third game. They picked it, they went to something that's comfortable, and it worked wonders. He was carrying the team fights alone. Like, it was so good.
And the other champion that got through that we've been talking about as well is Kalista. Kalista in the hands of Deftly, and he's able to find the victory there.
Yeah, I think Deftly's been generally the better player of the 2 bot laners. I mean, his Tristana game was super good, but GBM was inting, so what can you do when you're like literally 4v5ing in a game? It happens. And yeah, it was cool to see the adaptation and say, okay, you're right, there's a lot of priority on this Kalista here. And again, she's so good into the metagame. She's a Hurricane user, she's a Blade of the Rune King user, and even though Hurricane bolts do 40% damage, they do full-on hit damage. So you're doing 8% current health to 3 tanks every auto attack. Nothing beats that mid-game. It's impossible to do more damage than a Hurricane Blade of the Rune King user in any way, shape, or form. So lo and behold, does a really good job of lifesteal taking all the tanks he's fighting. By the way, the Rune King on hit damage counts for lifesteal. So you're getting like 700 health back per auto attack. You can't kill her either unless you stun lock her. So I think rightly so, Kalista is the go-to bot laner right now in pro play. I'm signing off on that. You're signing off on that. Every pro team should sign off on that as the most important champion, and definitely did very well on it.
Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'll just add in, like, how do you kill Kalista? How do you kill her? You know, like, think about it. It's like, you have to CC lock her, otherwise you don't kill her. And all the tanks, they have a skill shots that Kalista just jumps around. It's like, you know, just jumps around like, hit me, hit me. And you can't hit her, right? So that's one of the best AD after Caitlyn. And we will see a lot of prior or ban.
And one of the big things that you touched on while we were watching the game is that a first buy Blade of the Rune King is much better than a first buy IE without any attack speed buffs and crit.
Right, it's something that Freeze was talking about a bit as well, which is the scaling curves of these comps are different, right? Victor needs to get past Hex Core, and keep in mind, Hex Core is AP per level, so its intrinsic value is not even that high in the first place. You actually want to get farther than that. He wants to finish a Void Staff. I think if you're talking power curves for the Marksman, I think 3 items is when Tristana finally gets over the hump, and when you're at Essence Reaver or you're at Hurricane or whatever your third item is based on what kind of play you are, that's when you can finally start beating out a Rune King Hurricane, but you're not going to win IE Shiv compared to Rune King Hurricane. There's no way. Kalista's always going to win that, and so if you're taking team fights, when the Galio's on 2 items, the Victor's on 2 items, Galio's better. If the Marksman are 2 items, Kalista's better. And Renekton's better. Okay, well, at what point is your team comp better? 3 or 4 items. So wait, and you know, eUnited didn't.
Yeah, when you have a couple of examples of GCU not waiting for those fights, eUnited taking them and finding them early. 18 minutes in, a 2-for-1 down here in the bottom lane around Dragon.
And this was almost a really good fight for them. There's actually a desync here where Dandy's going to go in while you're seeing GBM look for a W flash. Great buster shot out of the bot lane, but then the re-engage comes in, and even though they are able to kill off Dandy pretty quickly, with a pretty decent ultimate out of the Taric as well, you're seeing like the start of this fight looks pretty good for Gold Coin, just generally speaking. Okay, Ricard gets cut off, but then this right here, the stun ends, and this flash taunt on 3 into the immediate jump on Fly. So good out of GBM, and it's the first like great play we saw from him the entire match.
Yeah, and here comes the part where we talked about the champion's power spike items. Here, it's the point where you're fighting versus Blade, Hurricane, Kalista, versus Galio on GBM. These champions, they want to fight you right now. You should never be fighting with 2 scaling solo carries like Victor, Tristana at this point, because if you do, you will lose the team fight. And that was the big turning point for United, where they got the fight they needed and they snowballed it to oblivion, right? You can see the damage. Kalista is just out of this world.
And that right there on the graph, you see the gold spike up right at 25 minutes, that dragon fight, that last dragon fight that we showed you. And GBM, I really feel like we got to touch on GBM. We were hard on him earlier in game 1 and game 2. Here in game 3, he shows up on something that isn't maybe necessarily the damage dealing kind of champion here, but he is making huge plays with the Galio.
and the comp fit it, right? They had the Callista. They ended up getting early to mid-game team fights. You know, adding crowd control and some burst in the backline works. Like, he went proto belt haunting guy, so he's able to actually push the Trist out of fights. Solo by himself. I mean, I know you were complaining about that earlier. I agree, it looked a little disgusting. I cringed a bit as a Trist player myself, but it worked out, right? And you know, there's one that's taking the top lane. There's a Jarvan instead of like a Maokai up there. So like all the pieces fell into place.
Yeah, I really feel like the fire drakes throughout all the series were just the biggest bait in the series. Where I thought, you know, GCU got the first fire drake, and then the second came up when we talked about the power spike and the items. If it wasn't a fire drake, they would just be, don't fight about it, we'll just scale, right? But that's exactly what they had to do, even if it's fire drake. If it's fire drake, they have first one already. Just give up the second one. Make it 1-1. It doesn't matter. You have Tristana, Victor. You will outscale. Just please don't fight when they have item power spikes.
Yeah, and that's hard because it's Fire Drake. You're getting baited by the Drake there. Fire Drake, best Drake.
Sure, but you're right. The situation was they still lost the Drake, and they also went down to the team fight. So, I mean, I don't like retrospective analysis. I think it's kind of unfair. But the choices that they made ended up also giving away gold, right? And so it clearly didn't look good in retrospect. But I think I agree with you. In the moment, at worst, it's going to be 1 to 2 Fire Drakes. You can come back from that. It's not a big deal. Giving away 5 kills is going to make it almost impossible, and it was.
Well, we'll get to see if they're going to be able to come back. We're going to go ahead and take a cool down for a few minutes, but stay tuned to see if eUnited can continue the reverse sweep or if Gold Coin United can close out and take home the title. You're watching the NA Challenger Series Finals.
Dandy's on the bottom side. Arctic is sold forward. There's actually a teleport being channeled by GBM that gets cancelled. Santorin is stepping forward. They want to go for this, and he gets locked up, and he's going to get taken down.
Twist that. Let's go. Let's beat Victor. Nice. Jarvan. Victor solo.
First kill is there on to Def for Deftly as Tristana's able to answer one. They're still fighting underneath this tower, but a double kill winds up running through for Callista. Deftly's running wild.